Good day, students. Welcome to mathgotserved.com. In this clip, we're going to be going over how to factor quadratic trinomials. We're going to be using the diamond grouping or X game method in carrying out our factorization process. Don't forget there are practice problems at the end of this tutorial for you to try out to demonstrate mastery of the contents of this presentation. Alright, instructions for the examples that we're going to do for us to factor the given expressions completely. And then check your work. All right. Okay, so let's take a look at the first example. For question number 1, let's say we have the quadratic trinomial 15x squared plus 16x plus 4. All right, so to do this, we're going to try to take this trinomial and express it as a polynomial with 4 terms that we can factor by grouping. Okay, so we went over factoring by grouping in the tutorial before this one. So you can take a look at the tutorial before this one in the playlist, and if you want to refresh your memory on factoring by grouping. So we have only 3 terms here, so we need 4 terms. Our attention will be focused on this 16x, all right? We need to replace it with 2 terms that we can replace this with in such a way that we can factor this entire polynomial by grouping, all right? To help us do this, we're going to play the X game or use the diamond method. So in order to execute the diamond method, we need A, B, and C values. Alright, so you notice the polynomial is written in standard form, so we just have A, B, and C based on descending order of degree. So A is 15, B is 16, and C is 4. So what we're going to do now is we're going to create an X. Alright, we're going to play the X game. Alright, so draw your nice little X. AC goes on the top and B goes on the bottom. So AC is 15 times 4, which is 60, and then B is 16. Now we need to think about 2 integers that multiply to give you 60 and add or subtract to give you 16. Alright, so some of you might be able to come up with it quickly, but let's make use of our t-charts to assist us in coming up with the numbers. Alright, so you place AC on the top, 60, and then we're going to write down all the integers that multiply to yield 60. Okay, so 1 times 60 is 60. 2 goes into 60 30 times, so 2 times 30. 3 goes into 60 20 times. Does 4 go into 60? Yes, 15 times. 4 times 15 is 60. 5 definitely goes into 60 12 times. And then 6 goes into 60 10 times. And that's basically it. 8 and 9 do not go into 60. So these are the all the numbers that we need that multiply to give us 60. Okay, so now the question is, which one can we add or subtract to get 16, our target number? We can clearly see that the only one that works is 6 and 10. All right, so we're going to place 6 and 10 right here, and then just check to make sure that it's correct. 6 times 10 is 60, 6 plus 10 is 16. Excellent. So now we're going to replace the middle term, this 16x, with these 2 values. Okay, and then we'll be able to factor by grouping. So we have 15x squared plus, so they're both positive numbers, right? So they don't have any negatives, so the default sign is positive. If you don't have any signs here, the assumption is that these are positives, okay? So we're going to take, these are like coefficients of the linear term. So it's plus 6x plus 10x. All right, plus 4. Now we have 4 terms. We can now factor by grouping to give us a visual representation of the separation process, what we're going to do is put a partition down the center so we can see what our left and right sides are. Okay? Okay, so what we're going to do now is break down every single term and then factor the first two by grouping and then the second two, and then we'll factor by grouping after that. All right, so if we break down 15x squared, that's going to give us 3 times 5 times x. And then if you break down 6x, that's 2 times 3 times x. Plus break down 10, that's 2 times 5 times the x. And then break down 4, you have 2 times 2. So let's pull out the GCF from the left side of the partition and the right side, okay? On the left side, what's common? Let's see, 3. We can factor out a 3. You can also factor out an x, so we can factor out 3x. So if we factor out 3x, it is as though we're dividing by the terms that we factor out, okay? So divide by 3 both sides, this is gone. And then factor out an x, it's as though we're dividing by x. And then we're left with 5 times x plus 2, okay? And then here, bring down the positive. Now, since we're bringing down a positive sign, no sign flips will happen. Whenever I bring down factor out a negative sign, this sign always changes to the opposite. Okay, so keep that in mind for the next example. So 2 and 2 are common. We factor that out. Okay, so we're dividing by that 2. So this becomes 1. This becomes 1. And we're left with 5 times x plus 2. Okay, so let's multiply the terms. 3x times 5x plus 2 plus 2 times 5x plus 2. So here's where you pause and check to make sure everything is looking good. It's looking good so far because the quantities in the parentheses are identical. Okay, so what we're going to do is factor out these two identical quantities, 5x plus 2. So that's factored out as 5x plus 2. So it's as though we're dividing by this quantity, so these two become 1, and we're left with 3x plus 2, which we'll group together in their own nice little parentheses. And ladies and gentlemen, this is the factored state of the quadratic trinomial, 15x squared plus 16x plus 4. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to check our work. Let's go ahead and check it. We're going to check by expansion. Okay, so since we're multiplying two binomials, we'll just follow it out. First, outer, inner, last, and that will give us the expanded state, and we'll see if it matches the original problem. Okay, so we're just going to go first, outer, inner, and then last. All right, let's multiply it out. 5x times 3x is 15x squared. 5 times 2 is 10 plus 10x. 2 times 3x is 6x plus 6x. 2 times 2 is 4. All right, so we just combine like terms, which are the linear terms here. I'll combine those. We get our final answer, 15x squared plus 16x plus 4. Now, does that match the original problem? It certainly does, so we know that our answer is in fact correct. All right, let's take a look at one more example, then we'll give you some problems to try out. So for number 2, we have 7x squared minus 15x plus 2. The difference between this and the previous problem is that we have a minus in the linear term. Okay, whenever you have a minus in the middle, you want to be careful. Proceed with caution with your factorization process, because signs will flip whenever you factor out a negative. Okay, so 7x squared minus 15x plus 2. So we have A, B, and C. So A is 7, B is negative 15, and C is 2. Remember, the goal again is we have 3 terms and want to replace the middle term with 2 terms so we can factor by grouping. All right, in order to find the two numbers that help us accomplish this goal, we are going to play the x game again, just as we did in the previous problem. All right, AC goes on top and B goes on the bottom. This x game or diamond method is sometimes called the AC method too. All right, AC is 14 and B is negative 15. So we now need to think of two numbers that multiply to give us 14 and add or subtract to yield 15, negative 15 to be specific. All right, so what times what gives us 14? 1 times 14 gives us 14. Does 2 go into 14? Yes, 7 times, and that's basically it. All right, so which of these pairs combine to give you 15 either by addition or subtraction? Is the first pair, right? 1 and 14. So we're going to insert it here. Negative 1 and negative 14. All right, so what is negative 1 times negative 14? Positive 14. What is negative 1 minus 14? Negative 15. Excellent. So this works. So negative 1 times negative 14 is positive 14. And if you add them, you get negative 15. So we're going to replace the middle term, negative 15x, with these two numbers. So we have 7x squared. And then replace it with these. These are the coefficients of the linear term. So minus 1x minus 14x plus 2. Okay. And then now we're going to break it down the center and factor by grouping. Let's make this red. All right. So break it down the center right here. So let's break down all the terms, all right? And then from the first two, pull out the GCF, and the same for the last two. So we're going to have here 7 is prime, so it's just 7 times x minus 1 times x. And then 14 is 2, let's do 7 times 2. All right, minus 7 times 2 times x. If you break down 14, is 7 times 2 plus 2 is prime, so just put it as 2 times 1. Alrighty. Now from the first two, what's common? What can we pull out? What's the GCF? You notice that x is common. So we'll factor out the x. When we factor out the x, it's as though we're dividing by it. So these two x's are factored out, divided out. And we're left with 7x. Okay. 7 times x minus 1. All right, so let's shift our attention to the right side of the partition. What's common? 2 is common. All right. But notice we're going to be factoring out. Necessities laid upon us to factor out this negative. Okay. So when we factor out a negative, anytime we factor out a negative, we actually put on negative 2. The sign becomes the opposite. All right. So this first term here, in here will be positive, and this one will flip this sign to the opposite, which is negative. Okay, so we took out 2. This 2 is divided out to 1. Factored it out. We took out a minus, so this plus becomes a minus because plus divided by minus is minus. All right, when you take out a minus from any sign, that sign becomes the opposite sign. We're left with 7 times x. Notice it's no longer plus, it's now minus, and then minus 1. All right, let's put it together. We have x times 7x minus 1 times negative 2 times 7x minus 1. How are we looking here? We're looking pretty good because the two quantities in the parentheses are identical. All right, that's a sign that our work is on the right track. So we're going to go ahead and factor those two identical common quantities out. Okay, so when we factor it out, it's as though we're dividing by those quantities. And we are left with x minus 2. We group those two together in their own nice little parentheses. And ladies and gentlemen, we've achieved the fully factored state of the quadratic trinomial 7x squared minus 15x plus 2. Alright, so let's check to see if our work is correct. We're going to commence with our check by multiplying. We're going to multiply out. Okay? Since we're multiplying two binomials, we're just simply going to apply the FOIL algorithm to multiply these out. Okay, so just do first outer. Let's do those two first. So 7x times x is 7x squared. 7x times 2 is negative 14x. So first outer. And then inner last. Double distribution. Bam, bam. Negative 1 times x is negative x. And then negative 1 times negative 2 is positive 2. Okay. So combine that downwards. Just the linear terms that will be combined here. When we do that, we're going to have 7x squared minus 15x plus 2. Does that match with our original question? Certainly does. Our answer is correct. Alright, so that's how you carry out factorization of quadratic trinomials using the AC method or the X game. Alright, so here are your practice problems. It's now your turn to do some practice. Go ahead and factor these quadratic trinomials completely and check your work. Check your answers, make sure it's correct. So what you're going to do right now is pause this video presentation, try out these problems. When you're done, click on the playback button, and we are going to show you what the correct answers are. All right, welcome back. Hopefully you had a chance to try out the problems. Here are the answers. Okay, so how well did you do in these 4 practice problems? Let us know in the comment section below. If you have any questions, let us know. We'll be more than glad to assist you. Thanks so much for taking the time to watch this presentation. Really appreciate it. Don't forget to support our channel. Tons of support resources can be found at mathgotserved.com. Do check it out or take a look at the links in the description below. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.